From the land of frozen lakes, this is 10,000 Takes, brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another week as we slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Twin Cities sports scene. And of course, Wally, normally we're on the radio, the Biz 1440, Monday through Friday between 5:05 and 6 p.m. But this is the television edition of 10K Takes, episode number 2 of 2022. And rumor has it we have a talking point today.
A rather large one that, of course, has been a talking point now for the last several weeks with the Vikings changing their front office around and Rick Spielman being gone. And, of course, head coach Mike Zimmer is also out the door. So the discussion begins. Who's next? What direction are they going to head? And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and what an odd scenario it was yesterday at the House of Noise, U.S. Bank Stadium, which was rather subdued. But there were two elephants in the room. You know, the futures of Matt Nagy and Mike Zimmer. I mean, that eclipsed the actual game that the Vikings won 31-17. So they finish at 8-9. And then, of course, the future of Rick Spielman. Now we know the Vikings have made the coaching change and the GM change. Out are Rick and Zim. Matt Nagy's already out in Chicago. So everything is on what's going to happen next with the Minnesota Vikings. Who's going to be the new GM and the new head coach? A total regime change. They detonated it. They blew it up, the Wilf family.
Well, and, you know, if you look at the history, Spielman's been around since 2006, actually, and then in 2012 became really in charge of all personnel. That was his deal since 2012. Brought in Zimmer in 2014, 8 seasons of Mike Zimmer. They missed the playoffs 5 of those 8 seasons. And I think that spelled the end. I mean, missing the last 2 years, not advancing into the postseason this season when they really cashed in all their chips. I mean, they took money that they're going to have to pay to Kirk Cousins eventually, and they pushed it into next season so that they could try and win this year. Well, that didn't happen. They lost a lot of close games. And really, it was something that you and I talked about at the beginning of the year. When you watch those preseason games, and I know it's only preseason, but their lack of depth really stood out. And you don't have that depth when you have to spend all that money on one guy. He will take up 25% of their salary next year with his $45 million cap hit. That's huge.
It's a monstrous chunk. And the Vikings, 4 years ago, when they were knocking on the door of the Super Bowl, they got battered in Philly in that NFC title game, but they thought they were one step away, and so they erroneously, put all their chips on Kirk Cousins. And it's more of a money thing that, hey, Cousins has done some good things. His numbers this past season, 2022, were outstanding.
Right.
But as you said, it did not allow them to pay other people and upgrade and fortify other positions. As a result, the Minnesota Vikings have been dog paddling. I mean, this is a franchise with no compass. It's a mediocre organization right now. And whoever comes in as a GM and as a head coach, I think that they're going to have to preach some patience. It may not happen overnight. Everybody expects a magic wand and this new hire that they're going to be able to get this team in the Super Bowl. Well, sometimes that happens in the NFL, but more than likely they're going to have to take an approach of, fixing like the O-line and some other things on the team that have to be addressed, and it'll probably take time. That's probably what Viking fans don't want to hear, but that's the reality of it.
No, we've been waiting 60 years. What's another couple of years,
right? What's another, 5. Plus, the other thing is, as long as Aaron Rodgers is in the NFC North with Green Bay, then I think everybody's looking up at Green Bay.
Yeah, and you see what a different team they are with Jordan Love at quarterback, don't you? I mean, it just makes a huge – heck, they lost to the Lions on Sunday.
Yeah, how about Detroit?
Detroit ends with a flurry. The Bears carried a 3-game winning streak, actually, into Minnesota on Sunday. But the Bears, much like the Vikings, just – man, I'm telling you, that some of the coaching decisions on 4th down, not kicking field goals in situations where it's obvious – a lot of coaches in the NFL now are just prescribing to these analytics that you just go for it on 4th down. I've never seen so many coaches going for it on 4th down as I did this season.
And I'm okay with some of these decisions.
Sure.
Like Matt Nagy went for it 3 times on Sunday on 4th and 1, but I believe on all 3 occasions he had Andy Dalton in the gun, and sometimes it was a spread formation. What about going under center and handing it off to David Montgomery, who was running, fairly well for parts of the game, and trying to get a yard, the old-fashioned way? Instead, they got to throw it. The Vikings sacked him 7 times. He had no chance, Andy Dalton. He was buried under that purple avalanche. That pass rush was impressive on Sunday.
Yeah, and as I said, instead of kicking field goals, they go for it on 4th down 3 times. They gave away 9 points. I mean, granted, better play calling might have gotten them one of those first downs, but every single time they go into that shotgun, and as you said, Andy Dalton got sacked.
And you know what's really starting to bug me about the NFL it's always been a sport that takes itself way too seriously, right? I mean, it's like they feel like they're cracking the nuclear code. I mean but it isn't rocket science. It's football. You look at that game on Sunday night with the LA Chargers and Las Vegas. Both teams tie, both teams get in. It looked like the Raiders were content to run out the clock and take their tie and allow the Chargers and Raiders to go to the postseason and eliminate Pittsburgh. And then Brandon Staley, the Chargers head coach, inexplicably calls a timeout.
He called a timeout with about 40 seconds to go in the game. And so he stops the clock. And interestingly, Derek Carr, the quarterback for the Raiders, afterwards told Michelle Tafoya in an interview, she said, so did that change things? He said, yeah, it changed our thinking. I think they were just going to hand the ball off. I don't think they were going to take a knee. I don't think that would have been the right thing to do, but I think that they were going to just hand the ball off, let the clock run out, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, they were going to tell Josh Jacobs, the old saying, high and tight. Don't fumble it.
Right.
Just keep running, and all we need is a tie to get in. Instead, Staley stops the clock with the timeout. They bring in Daniel Carlson,
the former
Viking, who's never missed a kick in that new dome on the Vegas Strip. And so Las Vegas punches a playoff ticket, LA Chargers out, and they're cheering the Raiders today in Pittsburgh, and that doesn't usually happen.
No, and by the way, the Chargers also went for it on a ridiculous 4th and 1 on their own 16-yard line, turned into 3 points for the Raiders, and you could make the argument that cost them the game.
All right, coming up, we're going to chat with Jeff Robinson. He spent a couple of decades as a scout and in pro personnel for the Minnesota Vikings. What is going to happen with this franchise? This is 10,000 Takes, your purple ticket.
From the first time you pick up a tuned-up custom rod, you'll know you're holding something special. A rod not mass-produced, but built one at a time by the hands of gifted craftsmen. Rods like the Precision, ice fishing's most versatile multi-species rod, or the Precision Noodle with a tip so sensitive you'll never fish a spring bobber again. And the Commander, the rod that's never met a big fish it couldn't best. Tuned up custom rods. Ice rods handcrafted for you and the way you fish.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision. It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
Hello, I'm attorney Lee Hutton. From my time playing football for the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers back in the 90s, to my current work in the courtroom with some of the most high-profile cases in the country. No matter the fight, I am there. I've represented and won cases for major corporations all the way to the everyday individual. From family law to entertainment law, contracts to trial litigation. I'm committed to my clients in presenting their story. Please contact me at lhutton@thehuttonfirm.com.
"10,000 Takes, Wally and Eric with you, and we're talking plenty of purple with the dismissal of both Mike Zimmer and also Rick Spielman being let go earlier in the day. All right, we're going to be joined now by a guy who was with the Vikings for a very long time, Jeff Robinson, longtime scout, was also the youth football coordinator. And JR, what in the end do you think, in your mind, was the final undoing of the Spielman-Zimmer era?
Well, I think two things. I think the first thing is the fact of, just not making the playoffs 2 years in a row. When it comes down to it, this game is all about winning, making the playoffs, and advancing in the postseason. And unfortunately, due to a lot of different factors, that didn't happen 2 years in a row. And when that happens, no matter where you are, the microscope is on you, whether that's being the coach, the GM, the scout, no matter what. It's all about winning, and that's what everybody looks at. So I think that was the first thing, and I think the second thing is just the fact that you know the the look of the locker room, just from all the things that you hear, things had changed over the last few weeks. Whether it was Justin Jefferson saying the things that he said, or Thielen being hurt, or just a lot of things seem to the dynamics of that team seem to have changed over the last few weeks. And of course, none of us never really know exactly what goes into hirings or firings in totality, but I think those are kind of two of the dynamics that seem to have changed over the course of the last few weeks. And when I say that regarding the record, then once you're eliminated, then now everybody starts to put the microscope on you for reasons other than your upcoming game.
JR, if you're going to be successful in the NFL, the head coach and the GM have to work in sync, in tandem. They don't always have to agree, but when they get in that room, they have to hash it out. Do you feel like Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer were on the same page enough?
Yeah, I do. The dynamic that you just talked about is one that was very prevalent with those two, and I think from day one they were always working together, for a common good, for a common goal. And obviously, as things get tight towards the end of a season, there's always frustrations involved from either side, because you're looking at it differently from a front office perspective as opposed to a coaching perspective, because it's long term, short term. But yeah, those two, they always talk, they always discussed issues. And so I don't think there was a lot of secrets in what their viewpoint was, between and amongst themselves.
Well, for better or for worse, Kirk Cousins tied directly to Spielman and Zimmer. Was Kirk Cousins Zimmer's guy or Spielman's guy, or do you think that they were in sync on that one too?
That's the $1 million question that everybody asks. But ultimately, it's everyone's guy, because when you're putting a team together, it's you can't just say at the end of the day, well, he was my guy or he was their guy, because the losses and the wins still are credited to everyone. So to say that he was, one person's guy or another person's guy isn't necessarily the right take, in my opinion, because guys like Jefferson came here, after Kirk was here. So there's a lot of players that have come in to help shape the things that Kirk has been asked to undertake as a quarterback of this team. And obviously there were some changes on defense as well that are tied into other factors, salary cap and those type of things. But I don't think that it's ever right to just say, well, he was his guy or he was his guy, because going back to the question before that, everybody talks about the situation that's being undertaken, and it goes back to should it have been Case Keenum or should it have been Kirk Cousins, or there's a lot of different ways to look at it. But once that player signs his deal, then he's everybody's guy, and you have to work to make sure that you win as a group and you lose as a group, not just, well, this guy makes this much money, how come he's not winning these games? Because one way or another, he's not doing it all by himself, which is what makes football different than most other sports.
JR, I feel like the Vikings have been dog paddling the last few years, that they haven't bottomed out, they haven't gone the Jacksonville or Detroit route, but they've been right in the middle, and that doesn't cut it. So now you're competing with Chicago, Jacksonville, Miami. I'm guessing that Las Vegas may stay with their guy because they're in the postseason. But what makes the Minnesota job attractive? Why would somebody want to come here as opposed to Jacksonville or the Bears or these other openings on the NFL map?
Well, there's a lot of history, obviously, with coming to Minnesota. I mean, when you look at the things that the Wilfs have done to make it an attractive environment for a player, it's hard to ignore those things. Number one. Number two, you do have an established quarterback. Obviously, he's going into the last year of his deal, but he's established, and that's always comforting to a head coach, because that they have to worry about as far as grooming and making a younger player mature. You have established receivers, you have established players on defense. Now, obviously, they have to get the situation with Danielle Hunter resolved. They have to do some things as far as shoring up the secondary, but there's a lot of talent that lies on that team already. So, if you're talking just some tweaks to some things without even doing a total deep dive, you're still talking about a team that was in the playoff hunt until just a couple weeks ago. And so, with that being said, you add a couple draft picks, and again, you start to shore up a few other areas, and your offensive line is a year older as far as the young players that they have playing now. And now you're talking about a team that once again could be right there in the hunt.
I assume at this point you first go out and get a general manager so that he can pick your head coach, correct? And if so, how difficult is it to hire a general manager, and where do you look for such a guy?
Well, it's difficult, number one, because all the people that you're looking for are off, basically starting to work on the draft and to work on free agency. That's the thing about the season is once the regular season ends, now you kick it into high gear with free agency, number one, and then the draft. So the things that people aren't talking about is you have to sign your practice squad players back to your roster, so so that they don't become free agents automatically and somebody else scoops them up. Why things are still I wouldn't say turmoil, but why there's still the unknown factors of who's undertaking the roles of general manager and whatever else lies ahead in Minnesota. So there's a lot of voids there, and again, all those people are undertaking the same tasks with their current teams. But there's a lot of quality candidates, a lot of talented individuals, throughout the National Football League that most teams in the league office are aware of those names, and hopefully, the thing that you look at is giving different people an opportunity. Now that some people have lost that opportunity, so you hope new people get an opportunity, not just the same people that have always gotten those opportunities.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, I guess it's wait and see, and we'll keep an eye on the Vikings and what's out there for them as we go into the future. Appreciate you spending some time with us.
Thanks, guys. You take
Thanks,
care.
JR.
All right.
Thank you.
Jeff Robinson, former scout with the Minnesota Vikings, longtime employee over there in, Eden Prairie and then Egan. Back with more, and Eric and I have an idea of who the Vikings might want to go after as their next head coach. Stay with us. This is 10K Takes, your purple ticket.
Hello, I'm attorney Lee Hutton. From my time playing football for the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers back in the 90s, to my current work in the courtroom with some of the most high-profile cases in the country. No matter the fight, I am there. I've represented and won cases for major corporations all the way to the everyday individual. From family law to entertainment law, contracts to trial litigation. I'm committed to my clients and presenting their story. Please contact me at lhutton@thehuttonfirm.com.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
From the first time you pick up a tuned-up custom rod, you'll know you're holding something special. A rod not mass-produced, but built one at a time by the hands of gifted craftsmen. Rods like the Precision, ice fishing's most versatile multi-species rod, or the Precision Noodle with a tip so sensitive you'll never fish a spring bobber again. And the Commander, the rod that's never met a big fish it couldn't best. Tuned-up custom rods. Ice rods handcrafted for you and the way you fish.
10,000 takes, and the coaching carousel continues to spin in the National Football League, Eric. And I know you've been giving us some deep thought as to
Yeah.
which direction your Minnesota Vikings should go. There are plenty of good candidates out there, so I thought we'd get into our hot takes, our hot 5 candidate picks, and I'll let you roll first.
Yeah, I've done exhaustive research on this.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
And the good news for the Wilfs, there are plenty, in my opinion, outstanding candidates who would probably be great head coaches or potentially have winning resumes. And you're looking for a general manager, so you're trying to get 2 for 1 here, right? I mean, you gotta make sure you get both these hires right. But as far as head coaches go, I think Eric Bieniemy. I mean, his time is overdue. Longtime Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator. Once upon a time, a running back coach here in Minnesota, so he knows the Twin Cities. And I realize he doesn't call plays for the Chiefs. Andy Reid does. But he's been around Andy Reid a long time, and he's a sponge. He's going to absorb what he's learned from one of the great offensive gurus in the NFL, Andy Reid.
Yeah, he's been there, as you said, a long time, and they've won, and he's had great weapons with guys like Tyreek Hill and along with Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, he's got weapons and he's been able to use them properly, and they've been to the Super Bowl a couple of times. I agree. I think Eric Bieniemy is a great choice.
He's got to be at the top of the list. I think another guy, assuming he wants to talk about the job, would be Josh McDaniels in New England. He's been right there under Bill Belichick, winning all those Super Bowls. Now, he did leave a few years ago, took the head coaching job at Denver. That was a grease fire. It didn't work out, but he came back to the Patriots. I think he learned from that experience out there in Colorado. The problem with McDaniels is maybe Robert Kraft has told him once Bill leaves, whenever that is, you're our guy. But you got to try to talk to Josh McDaniels. He worked with Tom Brady, now Mac Jones. He knows offense.
Yeah, he does.
Third one would be Todd Bowles, Tampa Bay defensive coordinator. I mean, he orchestrated a defense in that Super Bowl last February down there in Tampa where they were chasing Patrick Mahomes all day. They basically, chased that guy into the Gulf of Mexico. They shackled that potent Kansas City Chiefs offense. So Todd Bowles, I like him, and he also is a former head coach with the New York Jets.
Yeah.
The other one would be Jim Caldwell, number 4 on my list. Anybody who can win in Detroit.
Oh, boy, I was just
You've got
gonna
to give
say.
this guy an interview. And don't forget, he was a coach with Indianapolis when they went to a Super Bowl, so he's been to the big dance. I like Caldwell. And finally, Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. I normally don't endorse college coaches going to the NFL. Take a look at Urban Meyer, if you will. But Harbaugh was the coach of the San Francisco 49ers for a long time and took them to a Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick. I'd talk to Jim Harbaugh if he'll listen.
All right. Well, I've created a list of my own, and I know you're going to be just thrilled with this list, with tongue firmly planted in cheek. I figure the Vikings have had a tradition, recently anyway, of hiring from within and nepotism. So I'm going to start, and we're going to keep it all in the family. Let's label let's label this all in the family. We'll start Adam Zimmer, co-defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. He's done a great job, except that their defense the last couple of years has
Bump him up. You don't have to pay for moving costs.
Exactly.
He's right here in the Twin Cities.
Yep, and he's already getting a check, and we know that he's out of a job right now because I assume the whole staff is gone, right?
Yeah.
So Adam Zimmer. On that same note, Clint Kubiak, let's keep it in the family. Once again, here's a guy, he's your OC. Bump him up. Let's get him a head coaching job.
Yeah.
He's earned it. The offense actually has been pretty good. But Clint, give him the...
And he can always tap into Gary if he has any reservations about something.
Well, you can bring Gary back as the OC and move Clint as your head coach. How about A.C. Patterson? Let's not forget that Andre Patterson, the current co-defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, his son AC is also part of the staff. He was the assistant running backs coach. Another all-in-the-family guy.
We forget one good thing Mike Zimmer did was take care of his coach's kids, including himself.
Yes, he did. All right, now I'm going to reach back on this one. I was thinking we should bring back Bud. 94-year-old Bud Grant, but then I thought, wait a minute, that wouldn't be right because that's not in the lineage here. So Mike Grant, 11 state championships at Eden Prairie. Let's have Mike Grant as the Vikings' next head coach.
Actually, Mike Grant would probably have success.
He probably would.
He knows football.
He certainly does. And then last but not least, and this one is way out there and it's off the beaten path, but I guarantee you're going to hear his name mentioned, PJ Fleck, baby. Bring him over. He, after all, has a guaranteed rate bowl championship under his belt and a 9-4 season with your Golden Gophers.
Grab an oar, send him to Egan.
And how about that? An oar on a Viking ship. Wouldn't that work just perfectly?
It'd be a perfect marketing slogan for PJ. Yeah. He could make more money.
He could make more money with those oars out on that big boat in front of the Viking Stadium. All right, when we come back, takes of the day here on 10,000 Takes. Stay with us.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
Hello, I'm attorney Lee Hutton. From my time playing football for the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers back in the 90s, to my current work in the courtroom with some of the most high-profile cases in the country. No matter the fight, I am there. I've represented and won cases for major corporations all the way to the everyday individual. From family law to entertainment law, contracts to trial litigation. I'm committed to my clients in presenting their story. Please contact me at lhutton@thehuttonfirm.com.
From the first time you pick up a tuned-up custom rod, you'll know you're holding something special. A rod not mass-produced, but built one at a time by the hands of gifted craftsmen. Rods like the Precision, ice fishing's most versatile multi-species rod, or the Precision Noodle with a tip so sensitive you'll never fish a spring bobber again. And the Commander, the rod that's never met a big fish it couldn't best. Tuned-up custom rods. Ice rods handcrafted for you and the way you fish.
10K Takes, the television edition. Wally and Eric with you. Final segment of today's show. Time for Takes of the Day. Mood meter plugged in. Are you an angry American, cranky Yankee, giddy Guardian, grumpy Guardian? What's it going to be today?
Well, we just got finished with this 17-game marathon known as the NFL's regular season, and we head into the postseason where now you have 14 teams in.
Super wild card weekend.
Super wild card weekend. But as I look back at the craziness of that Sunday night game with the Raiders and the Chargers, and I know you and I were texting back and forth, I'm thinking, man, the NFL might have an integrity issue here if these teams take a knee in overtime and it ends up in a tie and the Steeler Nation goes crazy. I've got an idea for them. And actually, this is a real one. This is not tongue-in-cheek. I think that maybe in week 17, or week 18, I guess it is, but the final week of the regular season, no ties. You play until there is a winner determined in the National Football League. What do you think of that?
You know, I actually like the way it played.
Oh, my
on
goodness.
Sunday night. I was hoping for a tie.
You wanted him to take a knee.
I wanted a tie, and I wanted to hear the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base squawk, and I would have said, you know what? Then you should have never had a tie with Detroit earlier.
Well,
in the year.
there's
Shame
that.
on you, Steeler Nation. But no, I thought it gave it a unique twist and drama we've never seen before. And, of course, it went right down to the gun, and it looked like it was going to be a tie.
So you, in other words, you're the kind of guy that likes those overtimes in hockey where teams are just playing to get the point.
No, I can't stand that.
But
this
you're
is just
okay
a
with
unique
this.
circumstance.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Hey, it garnered the NFL huge ratings.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure it did. But I still don't like the tie thing. It's stupid.
All right, well, my take of the day is this. Never count out the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, this franchise, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. I don't think they're that good. I imagine they're going to get smoked in Kansas City. They're going to be barbecued in KC.
They will.
On Super Wildcard Weekend. But somehow they got into the postseason thanks to Daniel Carlson and the Raiders. But this is an organization that consistently wins, and you have to give them credit. They found a way back into the postseason.
Yeah, and who knows? They may win a game or two. You just never know.
They knock off the Chiefs. The Vikings could have Eric Bieniemy locked up by Monday.
Oh, by the way, Packers are the odds-on favorite right now to win the Super Bowl.
It might be Green Bay KC Super Bowl I rematch. All right, we got to go. Let's FedEx out those thank yous to David and our great crew here at the studio, also to Rocky and Jeff Robinson. For Wally, I'm Eric saying so long. This is 10,000 Takes, your sports ticket.